Thank you for listening to Lone Star Community Radio. This program was broadcasted and recorded live from the LSCR studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
Hey friends, and welcome back to another episode of Genuine Business Stories, where we have real front porch chats that inspire success. Today's guest is Beth Rohani, the powerhouse behind Ameritex Movers and one of Houston's most recognized moving brands, a first-generation Iranian-American who once dreamed of a newsroom career. Beth left journalism, transformed her family's small business into a seven-figure woman-owned enterprise now recognized among Houston's Fast 100. As told Voyage Houston in 2022, every job she ever had taught her something. It told her something about people, and it helped her with the foundation of Ameritex, to put people first. Her story begins with her family in 2000. Her mother, Melody Karvarian, made a courageous leap. She left a nursing career and found the original Ameritex Movers in Dallas-Fort Worth. That move ignited an entrepreneurial legacy that Beth would later expand into Houston, and in 2024, following her mother's retirement, Beth stepped in to assume leadership of the Dallas-Fort Worth operations as well. What began as two independently managed branches ultimately came under one unified vision, with Beth leading both Houston and Dallas-Fort Worth. Let's unpack this inspiring story of two generations of women who built and scaled one of the most notable moving companies in Texas, and how Beth took the foundation, honored it, and elevated it across major Texas markets. Morning, Beth. How are you doing?
Hi, how are you, Clint?
I am doing great.
Good.
I'm glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
And I want to jump right into your journey. So
let's do this.
We've shared a little bit that your mom had founded the original Ameritex Movers in DFW in 2000. And she left a career in nursing, per your talk with Voyage Houston 2022. What memories do you have of that, and how did that kind of evolve?
It's interesting that you asked that, because I don't necessarily just look back at my journey when it relates to my family, simply back to 2000, coming into the United States as a first-generation Iranian American. I saw my parents make the ultimate sacrifice. My dad had a flourishing career, and for them to leave their home, their families, their businesses, and to make that sacrifice to come into the United States, I saw that drive, that work ethic, that ability to be able to overcome life's toughest obstacles and challenges. And whether it was in 1984 or when I was graduating high school in 1996 or 2000 or, even 2017, you put timelines in place. I've seen my parents just keep pushing.
That is quite amazing. Most of us that are born here with the opportunities, it scares us to leap out. But the thought of your parents leaving your home country, making that kind of change to come here, and then building what your family's built as a matter of that's an amazing story in and of itself.
Absolutely. My mom's first job was working at a ice cream parlor. And, 1984, not to date myself, I was 7 years old. And that was the coolest job ever, because she brought a variety of ice creams home every single evening. And so just to even see my dad, with his laundromat, and, he would bring change home every night that my brother and I would get to roll and count. And, again, you see those challenges of, just down to the pennies of what they ended up building for my brother and I to have that opportunity. And especially for me as a female, with everything culturally that's going on overseas these days, you're very grateful for those sacrifices that your parents made for you.
So your dad owned a laundromat?
He did, yeah, and it's actually right where Dallas Cowboys Stadium's parking lot is located today.
That's pretty cool. I listen to Cody Sanchez, and she talks about buying businesses because as our boomers and Gen X start to retire, they're having problems selling a lot of their businesses where the kids don't want it. The kids have done other things. And the coin-operated laundromat is one of the businesses that she still talks about of using as a foundation as you start to buy businesses because of what you can do with the laundromat.
Oh, absolutely. He also owned an Oriental rug store right next door, where he, had the Persian rugs. And so growing up, my brother and I, always were at his rug store, leaping from one rug pile to another. But those are just really good memories that you have as a child, but also seeing, them doing their day-to-day, raising a family and trying to maintain their business. It's pretty incredible to be able to see that you were part of that.
And that also shows that with your mom and your dad, the two of you had a really good background of an entrepreneurial spirit as far as what you guys could do going forward.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
When you were a kid, did you have lemonade stands or anything that helped drive in money?
Not at all. There's actually one little girl that recently I saw on TikTok that ended up getting the highest number of Girl Scout cookies sold. And that was because she ended up taking it on TikTok. I did things like that. I was always really, with the fundraising and those types of things that we would go door to door selling. But for the most part, I wanted to open up a tanning salon when I was in high school. I was managing a series of tanning salons in Arlington growing up because that's kind of where my stomping grounds were. And it ended up that we actually went to the mall and met with the mall manager. And I hand drew a business plan with what the schematics and the floor plan looks like and everything. And I took it into her and I said, "Hi, we're interested in renting a space at the Parks Mall." And she looked at us and she's like, "Okay, well, it's $8,000 a month." And we just did this huge gulp and swallowed our pride and just kind of walked out and said, "Okay, where do we begin?" Because it's hard starting a business and managing and operating. And we'll get into that here in just a moment, I'm sure.
Yeah, that is expensive. I've got a friend who went to open a business, and it was in a new park, like our city centers, and it was brand new. And his rent rate was over $8K.
Mind you, mine was in 1996.
And this was
Imagine now.
in 05, 06, something like that. So it was a big time back too. And I look at that rent rate even now and go, that makes me sick at my stomach.
Yeah.
Before you get one dime, there's $8,000 that has to go just for
Commitment.
rent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So before you stepped into the moving industry, didn't you work in journalism a little bit?
I did. So, for me, I always enjoyed being in leadership positions. And I didn't understand the importance of what it meant to build a network. And interestingly, one of the things that you mentioned in your intro for me, and thank you very much for that wonderful intro, but one of the things that I learned is your network and how people trust you is everything. And, my parents never let me be a cheerleader as a first generation Iranian American. My dad said, my daughter is not going to go in front of boys and dance in a short skirt, and just never let me do that. But
I already like your dad.
But, I was always the cheerleader personality, and I always wanted to be that person. And I decided one day while I was working at the Parks Mall that I was going to go and compete in a local pageant. Little did I know that this little pageant was the Miss Texas pageant, where I became the delegate for Arlington and was crowned Miss Arlington to go and compete and represent a city. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. And none of that clicked. I had no idea. It was just something that I was doing just out of spite, for retaliation against my parents. But nonetheless, my picture was in the newspaper. The next day I had to go show it to my dad and face, the facts. And, surprisingly, he was so proud. And it was 1 year journey for me where right after high school, I was the delegate. And through that experience, I was an honorary member of the Arlington Chambers of Commerce. And so I got to go from one location to another location and do ribbon cuttings with these adults that are actual business owners or, actual people that are, adulting at that point in my life when I'm just simply, getting out of high school and trying to figure life out. But putting myself in that environment allowed me to be able to see that. So to answer your question, I did an internship at Fox 4 in Dallas. And, that was during the pageant time period, and I wanted to get into news. So I figured my mindset is do it and prove it. That's been my motto. So let me get in there and let me do it and prove it if this is what I want to do. When I came to Houston after the internship, very shortly thereafter, I called the news director because back then there was newspapers. There wasn't Google. And so I looked in the
Chronicle.
It was the Houston Chronicle. And I looked and it had 2 ads. One was for an assistant producer at KPRC and another one was an assignments editor at Fox 26. I called my news director in Dallas and I said, hey, I have this opportunity. What do you think? He said, call the newsroom, ask for so-and-so. I called, and I remember that person answered the phone, and they were so stern on the phone whenever I first called, because I'm sure they get all sorts of calls every day being in media. And as soon as I said who I was referred by, their energy just completely changed. And so through that, I got my interview. Through my interview, I got my first position as an assignments editor with Fox 26. And that was in 2000 when we moved to Houston. And in 2001, we decided that we needed an extra way to earn money for books and tuition. So at that time was when and when I say we, it's my former business partner and I, who was also my ex-husband. He and I at that time, he wasn't my ex, by the way, at that time. We were just dating. We ended up getting married in 2002. But nonetheless, throughout this journey, we opened a business together in Houston, which was Ameritex Movers. He initially started doing the moves on his own with his family. Dad, mom was helping along the way. And, besides the fact that, I had a full-time job that I was still responsible for, which was our main source of income, because starting a business, it's very unknown. It's all up to what you do with it and the commitment you're willing to make to it. And about 2004, I just decided the TV business wasn't anything that I wanted to do permanently. It was a great experience, taught me a lot. It taught me logistics, believe it or not.
I think there's one other thing it taught you, and that is when you made that phone call, and the minute you mentioned who referred you, what relationships can do for you in business.
Absolutely.
Often heard, it's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know.
Absolutely.
And who you know will only get you in the door. You better know something once you get in the door. But
do it and prove it.
But it can sure help you there.
And I would say, I'm a big believer on actions versus, what people tell me. And, it's challenging because you wonder, whether or not people have, good intentions. And, I've learned that through core values, I can identify that, but also just genuine actions. If people really do and say what they say that they're going to do, wouldn't life be so much more simple?
Yeah, it would. So did you find any correlations to your life in journalism when you come over to your business with the moving side?
Yes. The logistics aspect of it was something that I didn't realize I was learning while I was in the industry, because I was responsible to listen to 50 plus scanners. I had fire scanners, police scanners, EMS scanners, and this was from all different counties: Brazoria County, Fort Bend County, Harris County, and I had to listen for news drop. And some of the most significant news stories were Andrea Yates, the Challenger, our election with the hanging chads. I remember spending almost 3 days at the newsroom for, that decision to be made. And overall, through those experiences, you see those types of things, and, it builds who you are as a person in life. But the logistics aspect of having discernment of, do I need a live truck there, or do I need just a freelancer going and getting B-roll, and making your contacts with the different jurisdictions and getting the information from them that is accurate, and so the communication. So these are all underlying skills, and also accountability, because I will never forget one time I wrote up this draft because there was a situation where the person was taken by life flight, and I had written in my draft the person was life flighted, and the assistant producer came to my news desk and said, "It's not life flighted, it's taken by life flight." And to this day, like, I am scarred with taken by life flight. I will never say it, but again, there are these little things along the way that impact you. And I think, for me as a business owner, it showed me what accountability looks like, what communication looks like, what integrity looks like, drive.
Words matter.
Absolutely.
And I'll be the first to say that my business partner, ChatGPT, has spoiled the fire out of me.
Oh, what
Because I
would
can
we
put
do
together
without
an email,
ChatGPT?
copy it and put it in and go, now fix what I have in here. So it allows me to work faster.
So much.
But it didn't take long before I realized how that part of my brain, I have to do some of it myself, because it just becomes reliant upon the fact of, here's what I want it to say, go put it in, and then I read different versions and go, I like this one, and I change a few things and go with it. And it's made me a little lazy in that aspect, because it lets me get on with other business. And to some degree that's good, but to other degrees I'm going to have to do some of this myself, or I'm going to have a real problem.
I went into a bookstore, Barnes & Noble, on Friday night. That was my Friday night outing, and it was the coolest thing ever, because people are actually there. They're picking up books, they're reading, and I hadn't done that in a very, very long time. I'll put a little teaser out there. I'm publishing a book.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Is it going to be on Audible?
It will, but
Good, because I have
yeah.
north of 400 books I listen to on Audible, but if you make me sit down with that same book,
it will. Well, for me, this definitely evolved out of something unexpected, and that's just what life's journey has been. It's, how do you take opportunities that you're faced with, whether it's in a newsroom setting, through an internship opportunity, or it is being in front of a networking opportunity and building relationships to where people know you, people can trust you. And, I've now been able to establish that in the moving industry. It's something that I think it's important for you to be able to understand how you impact people in what you do on a day-to-day basis. And yes, words do matter. Your actions matter. And so, you're not perfect. As a business owner, nobody ever gave me the blueprint to say, this is how you run a business. But through those experiences, you learn. And one of our earliest quotes that we, just grabbed onto was Einstein's insanity is doing that same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And so if you have, something that is not working, why are you continuing to do the same thing, instead of fixing it? And so that was one instance. And recently, Maya Angelou's quote, and please, if I don't say it correctly, but it's, if you don't
put extra syllables in words with my southern drawl that I get in trouble for, I'm not going to correct you on anything.
But it's about change. And it's like, if you don't like it, change. And if you can't change it, change your attitude about it, because ultimately it's your mindset. And again, there's a Olympian that recently got interviewed yesterday about, how she's so into her mindset, and the answers and the responses that she gives is so in depth. But her response was, I have control over my mindset every single day. I can think. And I'll tell you, I'll be vulnerable with you, Clint. This morning I was in the car, and I have a super amount of anxiety that I'm dealing with, okay? I got in the car, and I'm like, this is wrong. This needs to happen. This needs to happen. Oh my gosh, what if this happens? Oh my, like, literally was like just on edge, okay? And it wasn't, none of it was about this. Believe it or not, this is my element. I love this. But everything else that you have bearing on your shoulders. And all of a sudden I said, Beth, stop. Think about what are the things you're grateful for right now. And I literally took a moment, and I'm kind of getting a little emotional, because it really is that mindset. Because when I did start thinking about all the things that I have in my life that are blessings, and we don't think about that on a day-to-day basis because we're just so into the, momentum of going that you stop to see like the true moment, of what you're experiencing.
Yeah. So I left multifamily in 2015 when I went into leadership with one of our larger insurance companies. I think it was 2010 when I went in. So just so you know, I have quietly admired you as an entrepreneur for years from afar and kind of
Thank
watched
you.
what you've done, tried to learn somewhat from you. I think sometimes type A personalities, if you're not careful in your mindset, you think your way is the only way. And the one thing I've learned is everybody else's way is right, and I need to shut up and listen a lot more.
Being a good listener is important.
Yeah. So I mean, I've always appreciated what I've watched you do. And as far as this show, when we put this together, there's a reason that our slogan's Front Porch Chats, because we wanted it just like we were sitting on the front porch, just having a cup of coffee and a conversation to keep it light, And like this, my screen won't move like it's supposed to now, but we can't restart every time or Dick would fire me.
And I'm better impromptu than, so don't even worry about your screen.
Oh, you're amazing. So you come out and you're now building Ameritex in Houston. Now, did your mom have Ameritex in Dallas at the same time? And we'll get to that
We
because
did.
ultimately I know that
Yeah.
you run that.
The businesses are separately owned and operated. And, one of the important things in our journey was not to mix business and family. And so, we didn't talk about business. And if we did, my way of doing it was completely different than, the way she was doing it. Although we shared, commonalities between the name and maybe even our general strategies. But overall, I would send rolls of, toilet paper and Pepto-Bismol to customers and say, do you feel like you have indigestion and diarrhea about your upcoming move? Whereas my mom is like, oh, you can't say that, and, very professional, like to whom it may concern, and it's just like, there has to be, some sort of like outrageous marketing, to maybe get brand recognition. And so, when we really kind of talk about marketing and branding, a lot of it deals with, how you can relate to your audience and, that trust that you're able to build with your audience. And so as we simultaneously grew the companies, the brand grew because of who we are as people and the core values that the companies have been built off of. So, there was a lot of alignment there because that's my mom, and our core values as a family is aligned. And so, if it's accountability, I had accountability. If it was integrity, they had, and so it just harmoniously worked to the point where in 2024, she made the decision to retire. It was something that organically, transitioned because, again, the genuineness and the core values, the foundation was already there.
Well, we can learn a lot from our parents. I remember I've always been a person where I'm going to seek guidance. Even now, there are still businesses that, not that I won't make a decision on my own, but I can be pretty quick to make a decision, and I will pause and pick up the phone and make a couple of phone calls and go, this is what I'm looking at. What do you think? And I remember my dad one time going, son, why do you ask me for advice? You don't take it. And I went, Dad, what you don't understand is I do take it a lot more than you think. At that time, I had a very good paying job and an ex-wife, and we could live well below our means, but still live pretty nice. Well, it's different than owning a business now. I don't want to run with that kind of debt, but that kind of debt with the income that we were making, it wasn't that much debt. And it was also not during a time where you thought you might get laid off every couple of years. You could kind of settle into a job, and your moves were your own career moves when you made decisions. I mean, I can look at 10-year plus periods long before I ever met you at companies in design and engineering. There was a 10-year period. IT at the upper levels, there was a 10-year period there. So, I mean, there were periods of life that you could make decisions and go, we're going to buy this house, these cars. And your thought wasn't what happens
Tomorrow.
insurance-wise.
Yes.
with property taxes and how it's going to change that mortgage.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, this year we're celebrating 25 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And the cool part about it was in 2025, we were voted Houston's best of best movers through the Houston Chronicle. And we're looking forward to going for it in 2026 as well. My mom always had a competitive nature, and I think that definitely has fueled me as well growing up. But I would say that, as you're looking at, building businesses and the responsibilities of building businesses, one of the important elements is the experiences that you go through. How are you able to evolve and adapt? Right now you talked about one really important thing, which was AI. And now that we're in an era of AI, I'm faced with how's my business going to adapt and evolve in the next 5, 6, 10 years. And, looking at movers that are, robots, again, and if you really think about it, there's already systems out there like an iRobot, that has the capacity, now you just need the engineering. And so for the most part, the technology's there and we're part of it. It's not going to go away. And so how do you then leverage it? Not the point where it replaces you, but the point where it leverages you and gives you the ability to be able to elevate your time and then your skills to doing things that are more impactful.
Yeah. It can also, for my business, I'm a commercial insurance broker. So as an example, I could quote your business. I could take your policies, and because a broker, there'd be multiple policies. I can take these policies, feed them into, we'll use chat as an example, and go in and I can put what I want to say in there and tell chat, this is what I need you to pull out of these policies, where I'm looking at exclusions and others to where I can honestly give you the best policy for us to talk about for the best money, where that would have been hours to go through and dig through 50 pages in document
Correct.
Information, to where now it is, here's what I'm needing you to find. I know what to look for, but it can sure cut my time down by pulling comparatives out of whichever policies that I have quoted.
Correct.
So I think AI is using it to our advantage. I will tell you right now, as I put stuff together, I have no fear of chat taking my job. It might in the future, but some of the accounts I've fixed they went online because you can do it online, and created a real mess because we're busy with our own business. Mm-hmm. I don't care about what I don't know for other stuff. I go to people and ask them. People want their business, their insurance at a fair price with good coverage, and let me talk to you once a year. Now I have you're going to talk to me quarterly because things can change, but it's still that philosophy of, I like you, but I don't want to spend a lot of time with you as my agent because that's a cost to my business, and yes, it protects it, but it's not making me any money.
Yeah. Well, and when you evaluate again all those factors, right now with inflation, and the price and the cost of everything, it definitely is something that there's a lot of opportunities for you to be able to leverage your time and your capacity, again, with automations and things that work for you on the back end, that allow, even your business to work for you while, again, and I don't want to say, robots, but chatbots or, whatever it is, it's doing its job back there, analyzing data and, figuring out. So, for me, I think one of the most challenging ones, that businesses also have to overcome is, climate. In Houston, we deal with hurricanes, and, how do you overcome those types of challenges? I know.
How do you work around hurricanes and rain?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in a lot of cases, we're first responders because, you have to mitigate mold and make sure that, those types of situations. But, you also want to make sure that there's safety. There's been, instances where, Beltway 8 had cracked in the middle and was shut down, during certain, periods of this past 25 years. And a lot of it also is communication. I think, when people are uncertain or unaware of things, that's where, the stress is created. And, part of our brand is the stress-free experience. Our vision as a company is humans helping humans. What that vision means is we're, beyond just doing moves every day, but it's the lives and the people that we impact every day, whether it's a person that is a team member in the office working together and how they support each other, down to someone who's out in the field, down to a customer. And it goes both ways because it's like a relationship. And so how effective that communication is, then that dynamic when it comes down to moving is effective as well. And so I learned that the human helping humans aspect of it creates the key to stress-free simply by communication. And so for us, humans helping humans is our vision. Creating a stress-free experience is our mission. And our core values, accountability and communication, are hand in hand with number one.
I found in leadership, it's also realizing that everybody has a different personality. An example, there are things my dad or my son-in-law could say that I promise you I couldn't get away with. My fiance. Now, my personality would be go, don't say that when I was younger. But now I have very much a personality where people go, he's nice until he's not, which simply means when we're conducting business, we're going to honor each other's word. If you reach a point where you start going against your word, then that's where you're going to see the serious side of me step in and go, that's not what we're doing here. But my dad, who is now passed, love him, or my son-in-law, or even my fiance, they have different ways. And there are things that I will tell you that my fiance can say in business that if I said the exact words she said, I would be out of business, where other people laugh and go, you're so funny. With me, it'd be going, I don't ever want to talk to that guy again. And
Yeah.
You kind of see, here's point A, here's point B, here's my budget, here's the process, but I'm willing to look at yours too. And if you can get there and maintain that, then I'm not going to tell you what to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to step back a little bit. You started Ameritex in Houston. When did you join the Houston Apartment Association?
It was around 2006.
So are you doing other associations outside of that also to grow your business? I know that I know you from the Apartment Association, but
I have. I've had an interesting journey. So I was part of the board for the Houston Apartment Association from 2009 through 2016, and that was an amazing experience. Was part of the Leadership Lyceum program, which again allowed you to be able to see how boards operate, allowed you to be able to see the inner workings of an association. The Houston Apartment Association is the largest trade organization in the nation, and it is just an incredible machine with its political action committee support and just the overall structure of the membership and how the members support the organization. And so whether it's management members or vendors. And so again, through the whole principle, and I don't necessarily would even say it's the Houston Apartment Association, but it's whatever environment that you put yourself in, as long as people see that you're a trustworthy source, then they'll do business with you. They'll refer you. Every single week I get just phone calls and text messages. It's like, Beth, I have this person that's needing movers. Beth, can you help me move next week? And that's again, just because they know you now and they trust you as a source. So I would say, involvement in general in wherever you can that's complementary with what you're doing. And so, you and I are complementary. You're an insurance agent. And so how do you complement, that network opportunity and vice versa?
How do I podcast?
Absolutely. Well, and, again, our relationship goes, further with the Houston Apartment Association. But, how do you get it to the point where you use those opportunities to not only bring value to that organization during your time and your commitment, but also gain value through that time and that commitment. And so I also served on the board for the International Management District, and
That's something I wanted to ask you about. When you were appointed to a board of directors, for our careers, that is somewhat of an accolade.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance it? Because like with me, if you were to go out to my LinkedIn or my Facebook or any of them, you would see in there where I'm on the board of directors, but you never saw me post it. I was always cautious, not wanting it to look like, here, attaboy. So how do you balance that? Because it does bring credibility to your business, but there's a balance between look at me and letting people see what you've done.
Yeah, that's a good question. I am a big believer at this point that, again, the people speak for you. It's not about what's on your resume and, how you advertise it. A lot of, my process at this point is putting myself in environments. So you asked, currently I'm on the board for the National Speakers Association, Houston chapter. And this year
is that the chapter that I looked you up in?
Mm-hmm. Yes, currently.
I saw another friend was out there, Deborah.
Oh, yeah, Deborah Rohani. She's our director of membership. Yes. And, again, my connection with her through the Houston Apartment Association sparked that relationship because, again, I know her, I trust her, and I know that she's done membership for the Houston Apartment Association. And so through that networking opportunity, now, there's an opportunity for her to be able to, expand her network. And that's essentially how it works. Whenever, I first went into my very, initial Houston Apartment Association event, there was 800 people there. And I'm like, how am I ever going to get to learn all these names? And, before long, you're actually part of those 800 people. But you're not going to be part of those 800 people if you don't put the time and the commitment to it. And so going back to your question, how do you balance it? You have to balance your commitments. And so I'm at a point of learning to be able to say no to things and understanding that when I overextend myself, it decreases the value and the commitments that I'm able to put into certain things. So I'd rather not be partial. I'd rather be whole. And, if it's maybe not this year that I can be whole in a certain commitment, maybe the opportunity will present itself again next year. And it becomes, again, something that I know that's a potential point that I can pivot to. And so when I became a member of the National Speakers Association, it was, again, a time where I wasn't saying no to a lot of things. And I was going through a divorce. My partner and I, we were married for over 20 years. And I had to make that commitment to myself of, just the independency since all my life, all my 20s, all my 30s, half my 40s were about codependency. It was an opportunity. And through that experience, it allowed me to go into the National Speakers Association and try something different. And that now has given me, again, something that I can put on my resume that builds credibility, but it's not anything that I have to go in and, publicize and say, hey, look at me, I'm the president of the National Speakers Association. I do it because maybe I go to a national conference, and while I'm at the national conference, I post pictures on my social media that I'm at that conference. And so it becomes, again, more of a networking story. And I think that's the important part of
You are brilliant at cross-relating your networking stories on social
and that's
media.
exactly. And I think that's the core of it is, when I first started my social media for Instagram, it was 2020 when I was at the heart, 2021, when I was at the heart of my divorce. And it was actually more of a passive aggressive way of wanting to get back to my ex and be like, look at this wonderful life that I have, but then I decided early on, because I was posting my stories, people were like, wow, I'm going through the same thing. Wow, what you just said completely changed, what I was thinking. And when you realize that you're making a difference in people's lives, quickly your motive changes. And so, and also, given that people in the apartment industry knew me, I'm also a licensed realtor, so people in the real estate industry know me. And just a general, I mean, we have partnerships with the Children's Museum, so at a point, I have to explain to people, because people are going to wonder. And I didn't want people to create a story version for me to just whisper and be, talking behind my back. So I said, why not just expose it and say, I'm human. I'm going through a divorce. I don't want to go through a divorce. I'm a winner, like mindset. I just told you a little while ago, I love competition, and I love winning. My parents have been married for 51 years. That's what I've seen all my life. And that's what I aspired to. But sometimes life comes to the point where you have to make tough decisions. And I made one of the toughest decisions, but I also did it with kindness and made sure that, the experience for both of us was something that, again, separated in a way that set both of us up for success. And through that experience and telling my story, I haven't been on social media recently just because I've been busy with work, but I think it's like almost at 100,000 followers on Instagram. And, that's, again, just being vulnerable and getting out there. And a lot of it, again, is just me being at work and going through the frustrations of an entrepreneur or the day-to-day and just saying, okay, Beth, you've made this commitment to shoot a reel every day and post it at 4:00, 5 days a week. And so what are you going to talk about today? And it's like, okay, get on camera for 90 seconds. This is everything that I'm going through. And then, but people see that realness, because, again, it's not scripted. It's just what's happening in your life.
I don't think a lot of people in the state, unless they've lived it, understand the embarrassment that first divorce can cause. With my dad's family, my great-grandfather was a minister. My cousin now is a minister at the church that my great-grandfather was part of founding. My grandfather was a minister. As you go in this, I was the first. They had 11 siblings, 9 that still live. The DPT booster was very dangerous for my family, so my dad lost 2 sisters by the time they were 5 years old because of the adverse effect on that booster, and it's now since changed. But as we go through this, that change, I was the first person to go through a divorce in this family, and there's well over 100 of us just from Grandma and Grandpa. And when I took the job and went to Kansas, when I left here to go into leadership, I had a good relationship with my grandmother. But before that, I was a grandkid that was raised here. And I remember when I met my half-a-wife, as I jokingly say, because I think we both got married on the rebound. You don't want to be single. And when I said something to my grandmother, she goes, well, she's a good Christian woman. What's she doing marrying you? Mm-hmm. I'm not a person that really cares what you think, but I kind of left there and went, wow, grandmother. Mm-hmm. But once she got to know me, unfortunately, I had another cousin that went through a divorce that was up there, and what my grandmother got to see was, when it's going to happen, you're not going to stop it, So, and sometimes the person that stays, they're also the person that doesn't realize how mentally unhealthy they become to where it's no longer a desire, it's a codependency because you're not sure what to do if that scenario hits. What do I do with myself? I've been married since I was a kid, and sometimes you have to go back and tell that spouse, thank you very much for helping both of us out.
Yeah.
And that's not to make light of a divorce, but, there are times where I think 2 personalities just, you're such young kids that you forget to grow up together and you grow up apart.
Yeah. For me was identifying my own personal core values, believe it or not. I was asked in 2012 2 significant questions. One was, what are your core values? And the second one was, what's your passion? And I'm a very articulate person. I always have an answer for everything, but I didn't have an answer for this. I couldn't verbalize what my core values were. And that's when I went on my journey of trying to figure that out. And we were doing an exercise in my business in 2018 where we were identifying the company's core values. And, here I am raising my hand saying, accountability, that's number 1. And I saw my former partner, my ex-husband, and that was the farthest thing, he wanted was accountability. And I quickly was able to see that our core values were not aligned. And, when I identified that, then it was like, okay, one, how can I get our core values aligned and try to fix this? Is it communication? And so you try to communicate. Is it, being accountable? But then you see that you're always the one that's being responsible and fixing the, messes that are getting created. And so at some point, I didn't want to ask for the divorce. It happened. And I know that when we were going through it, one of the commitments I made to myself was be kind. Nobody wants to go through this.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go through this. And also don't have it impact your business too, because again, it's already difficult with what you're dealing with personally, but then to have it interfere professionally. So there was a lot of awareness that came of, how you navigate through that experience. And, again, ensure that when you walk away without having guilt. And I was able to do that. And, of course, our stories, there's one significant word between, what his experience was versus what my experience became, which was hope. And ultimately, I gained hope because I surrounded myself with networks of people who lifted me, who supported me. I got involved in the National Speakers Association. I became a member of a mastermind group that was actually, interestingly, it's called, Gathering the Kings. And when I did his podcast, I had done a little bit of research about him, Chaz, and noticed that it was a mastermind of just all men. And so after I did the podcast, I said, what's up with this mastermind? Why are there all guys? And it's called Gathering the Kings. Where are the queens? And he's like, it's funny you should say that. And, I always love to be a first and everything. So I became their first queen, as, in a 6-figure mastermind group of entrepreneurs. And so you get yourself in environments like that of like-minded people who then are there to support you in a new journey of uncertainty. And, that's again what people become most stressed about. Today, this morning's anxiety was uncertainty, was my fear of uncertainty and this, thing that we don't even know if it's going to happen. We don't even know. And 99% of it doesn't even happen. So why am I thinking about that right now? And why not think about, the blessings I have? I'm in a great relationship. We just celebrated and, never in a million years, did I ever imagine? But
well, congratulations on that.
Yeah, and you can't ask for anything more, because again, just this world is completely different, than the world that you and I grew up in, even when it comes to dating, and trusting people, and so I'm lucky in a lot of ways to have always had a good network, a good support of just, again, good influence that I can also equally be a good influence back to.
There are two key words in business that I think get overlooked. Entrepreneurs, the first one is hope. As long as there's hope, there's tomorrow. There are days in my business where I go, my goodness, there's a lot of work to be dealing with this. And then the very next day, it can be something that happens. It might be a package for another business that's worth quite a bit of money, and you win that, and it's a smile going, oh, this is why I do it. It's also association. My dad always taught me association breeds participation. And it wasn't that you're snobbish to other people, but you're going to somewhat be like those that you spend most of your time with. So if you spend time with people that party all the time, then you're going to party all the time. So there's that balance between your family, especially as you get older. My daughter's married and 2 kids and 35 years old. And I wish I had been as good a dad that I think I was, because she's turned out pretty successful. And my son-in-law is pretty amazing too. But then you go, there's a whole lot of that that's on their own too, that they do themselves.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Let's dig in before we run out of time. You joined you joined Houston. So how long did it take you to become profitable?
It's interesting that I don't even think I'm profitable today. I'm just like, I'm thinking, okay, well, because you have to always reinvest into the business. Up until last year, I drove a 2012, car with 160,000 miles on it. Paid off. I live in an 800, 900 square foot condo. I shop thrift, and I don't have kids. Kids are very, very expensive. And, I have also ever been put in a situation, the money was always reinvested into buying equipment and, putting it back into the business, marketing, or whatever the case is. And so, it's interesting because I'm like, just like everybody else, I get a check just like everybody else. If anything, I'm probably one of the most underpaid CEOs in Houston, but you make sacrifices like that for your business. And, the profitability, I think, comes from me in the reward of the people that I get to impact on a day-to-day basis. Just the employees that are no longer with me still send me messages and say Ameritex was one of their biggest life growing experiences and they learned so much while they were there. It just makes me so proud of the time and the commitment that I've made to it. Long term, I think if I build the business in a way to where there's structure, there's standard operating processes, which we have a lot of, build a clear brand and really structure it in a way that, it's scalable. That's ultimately the goal. I have 2 locations now. And so how do you then take that model? So that's a lot of the focus at this point in my life of, what does that look like? And how do I, build that scalable model to where everyone is rowing in the same direction. Everyone believes in the same mission, believes in the same vision. And even for myself, getting clarity on what that mission and that vision looks like. And I couldn't have been a good leader had I not known that direction myself. And so, after the divorce, very shortly after was when my mom retired. And then, 2024 was just kind of figuring things out. 2025 was building the leadership team. So now, I have a great leadership team that's in place, and we're able to adhere to the routine processes because now there's consistency in our day to day. And so, also being clear with your processes. 25 years, it's all in my head. And a lot of business owners, that's, I think, where they go wrong. And that's where I went wrong. And so if any of the listeners from today's podcast have anything to take away that are entrepreneurs, I encourage them to start with the foundation of identifying their mission, their vision, their core values, have their company handbook in play, understand, their books, get, some sort of, QuickBooks or accounting software that lets them see profit and loss. Learn it. Don't be afraid of it. Profit and loss sounds like a big word, but it's really just plus minus, at the end of the day, and what is ultimately left. And so when you ask, when do you become profitable? I think for me, the profit is in what, the team member it is earning out of it in terms of their value and their time with Ameritex.
So do you do a lot of sponsorship back with HAA? The auctions I noticed when I had joined for that 1 year, when we went to the auction right after COVID, even for bottled water, the prices of where things were going a couple of years prior to that, well, I guess for me that would have been close to 7 years prior, but it still blew my mind. So
with everything, Clint, I mean, even with like Google AdWords for the key term Houston movers, for just one click, and that's not even converting the lead, but that's just one click, could potentially be $75, $100 because it's such a high value opportunity for you. And so I wouldn't necessarily say, it's just one particular association or organization, but it's more so of, placement. Where do you want to be? Who's your audience? What's your audience? And, what do you want them to see? And, if your audience is online, or if your audience is social media, or if your audience is, the chambers of commerce, then you ultimately are, able to take advantage of those opportunities, that they present you. But also, again, knowing your audience. So let's say, for example, if I, go to, just as an example, if I go to the Houston Apartment Association, I'm probably, maintenance is not going to be my audience, and so I wouldn't, in an auction, bid on maintenance related events. And so it's just really understanding your audience as a business and then knowing how you're going to target it strategically.
For me, if I came back, it's the vendors. It's not that I can't write apartments, but that's not my bread and butter. So it would not be the property managers or their companies. It would be the vendors or plumbers.
There's so much opportunity. Absolutely. Yeah, there's so much. I mean, just you and I, It's definitely something, but you have to spend the time to build the relationships. And then when they trust you, they'll pick up the phone and they'll call you. But if you don't, and your name is just printed there, then, don't expect for them to just pick up the phone and call you and feel comfortable with you.
No, that's true. So we've got Houston. Are you finding that, because you're involved in quite a bit, are you finding a crossover where the National Speakers Association or those, where that all bleeds back towards your business because of the relationships you build?
Yeah, absolutely. Interestingly, whenever I did my first few reels on Instagram, I was, looking at the direct messages, and there was one woman from Rice University area. She had messaged me and she had said, "Don't think I'm crazy, but I just saw one of your videos about the divorce that you're going through. I'm also first generation, American, and I'm going through the same thing with my husband. I am thinking about getting a divorce and I need you to move me." And I was like, oh my gosh, that's definitely not the reason why I started doing these divorce stories, is to get women to leave their husbands and get to move them. But for the most part, people are, in a situation where, again, and to this day, she and I are friends, believe it or not. It wasn't many situations that happen like that. But again, how do you impact people, and how do you see these lines crossing, from one another? But ultimately, being part of the National Speakers Association, it's allowed me the opportunity to think about my story. My story is ultimately death, divorce, and moving, and how I experienced all three, which are the most stressful things people have to go through in their lifetime, all in one day. And how do you overcome just the weight that falls on you between death, divorce, and for me, moving was figuring out what's happening with the company, and how do you not let it impact your customers and your employees and still be able to manage it along the way, and moving on from my own, life and experiences. And so it became a significant trio for what my story was, and how I'm going to shape it and form it, and ultimately if I'm going to make it a keynote, or if I'm going to go into consulting, and what that ends up looking like for me. But ultimately, it allows you to be able to see, that there are other opportunities. And maybe when you see somebody else who's written a book, then it sparks that in you to say, okay, I can go after it and I can do it, and research it a little bit more and gain the confidence and put yourself in the environments that propel you to get to where you want to. Because just like you said, you may not know everything, but you surround yourself with people who do. And as long as you're able to do that, then you feed off of that information and that influence naturally.
I had a good friend of mine, still a good friend of mine, incredibly intelligent, and this is probably 15 years ago, he told me, he goes, Clint, when you walk in a room and you're the smartest person in that room, you're in the wrong room. You're not going to learn anything. You need to leave that room and go into a room where everybody else is smarter than you, because as long as you keep elevating and you don't leave your friendships, but as long as you keep creating new friendships with individuals that are smarter than you in what you do, say business owners or stuff, that's how you continue to learn.
Absolutely.
And it's not that we don't want to give back, too, but you want to be able to learn there. And so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
Well, can I add to that real quick?
Yes.
Interestingly, whenever I went to the Miss Texas pageant, I got there, and Clint, I had prepared for this thing for 1 year, working out every single day, eating, learning how to talk to judges and answer questions. When I got to the pageant, I walked in, and it was just women that had been doing this since they were born. And I'm like, I am just so out of my element, Beth, like reality check. This is not going to be something that you're going to win, but have a great time, enjoy the experience. And that was the mindset that I walked into the pageant with. And really, I did. I met a lot of friends. Interestingly, Eva Longoria was competing as I think she was Kingsville at that time, and I didn't even know it. And so you build these relationships, but at the end, they voted for me to be Miss Congeniality, and it was nothing that I ever expected at all. But it just showed me that, one, it was the best title I could get because I wasn't judged by a panel of judges based on a certain criteria. I was judged on me. And it was something that, again...
Your personality, that is very fitting. You're always nice to everybody you meet.
And it goes such a long way. When I'm walking in the street and I, cross paths with someone, we always tend to look away. And my thing is why not look at them and smile? And believe it or not, 9 out of 10 times that I've done that, they've smiled back.
Yeah.
So simple. And it doesn't cost anything, as my mom says.
No, it doesn't. So where I was going to put you on the spot is the National Speakers Association. As we've discussed, that's something I have a real desire in. What I am working to learn is how to balance my time. With the National Speakers Association, since I only know what I've read, how much time would I need to dedicate for it to work for me? Because I want it so that I can be a better public speaker. An example, I just had to do an award with a partner at our last Big Chamber Awards. And I didn't take my glasses, I didn't have my stuff, and he had his stuff. And as I read it, I call out the word soap for soup in the business name. All I did was laugh and go, somebody bring me some soup when we're done with here, because, this is a great company. But you have to go with it. But I want to learn how to be better at that. I enjoy that, but it doesn't always mean I'm the best. It just means I'm having fun with it. So is that something that can be balanced with joining and spending enough time? But as I noticed with that, my life is Montgomery County, and that is, I believe, Harris County with there. So what are your thoughts on that?
Interestingly, whenever I became a member of the National Speakers Association, I walked into an organization that essentially had dissolved. After COVID, there was just not very much participation. And it's a group of volunteers that run that board. So nobody gets paid for it. I went in, again, not saying no to a lot of things. And when I said yes, within my very first meeting, we always joke and we say we're cornered in the break room because it just seems like everyone who serves on the board was cornered in the break room. But I was cornered in the break room. And the person who also served as the president prior to me, who's now our past president, Megan, she too was cornered in the break room, and she became director of membership. I became director of marketing. At that time, it was my divorce, and I didn't know whether or not I was going to keep my business and what was going to be my future. So I was like, I know marketing. I love marketing. And so let me say yes to this and do marketing for something else outside of my company to do it and prove it to myself to say I'm capable of building this. And if I want to go in this direction, then I already have started the foundation for going in that direction. And, again, building a lot of processes and whatnot. And so when I said yes to director of membership, I asked them, I said, okay, give me my guidelines, give me my parameters. At that time, our president, and he goes, you have no guidelines, you have no parameters, just the world is your oyster, do what you want. And when Megan and I got together, we noticed that there was no structure in the association. Even our bylaws still had bracket interchapter name in there online. And we're like, what did we get ourselves into? And, this is not something that we're doing because we want, liability for ourselves. We're doing it because we want to be part of something and add value as a result of, our time and our efforts and commitments that we're wanting to make. And quickly they asked us if, we're looking to serve. Megan was president. I became president-elect. And so with Megan's role, she focused a lot on building that structure, the bylaws, the privacy policies, code of ethics, and again, just making sure that that foundation is there. With me, when I came in, and believe it or not, I really didn't want to do it. Because when you ask, like, what is the commitment? If you serve on the board, it's another job. It's another job. It's a business that I'm running. It's not anything else that I look at other than how do I run this as a business? What do I do for sales? What do I do for marketing? How am I keeping accountancy for, the finance side of it? How do I bring in the leaders, to run this? What departments are they running? And interestingly, when speakers come from different parts of the world and we take them out to dinner, who are our guest speakers, and I introduce them to our board, they're like, are you a speaker? And Deborah's like, no, I'm not a speaker, but I'm looking to be. Lenore, who...
Well, Deborah's always spoke quite well.
She's spoken quite well.
You should ask her sometime about her first meeting with me when she had to ride with me.
I will do that. But not as a profession.
Don't hold it against me if she doesn't like me.
Okay, mental note. But, and so nobody on the board, I would say 2 people on the board, 3 people on the board are professional speakers. But everyone else, we're workers. We're there to run a chapter to make sure that we serve our members and the commitments that we've made to our members. And throughout this 3 years that I've been part of it, I've listened. And what does the membership want in order for it to grow? And a lot of it is people like you who are business owners, who are, solopreneurs trying to manage multiple things, and they don't have time to drive to. So we do have one in-person location that's once a month. It's the 3rd Friday of every month, and it's 2 hours. And we always bring a in-person speaker that's national, that allows, you to be able to learn from their expertise and their experiences. And then we have virtual programs. So the virtual programs are interesting because Jordash Johnson, who is our current president-elect, he is focused fully on AI and how to automate your business. And he's now teaching speakers how to be able to do that, to not only learn how to work with AI and building prompts, but also the commands that you give and how it can help automate your systems. We have Chaz that I had mentioned earlier as part of my mastermind group. Chaz, he has his fee that he charges his members. But as a result of my relationship with him, I said, we have to bring how to run the business of speaking to the Houston chapter, because we all speak and it's great, but running it as a business is completely different than just being a speaker.
Yeah.
And how do you build that mindset from the very beginning? So his program is actually today, right after this. So if you guys want to join in, go ahead and be able to check out our events tab, because there's also a lot of events that are virtual that you don't have to be in. Once you also become a member, you get access to the vault. So even our in-person programs that you can attend, you're going to be able to see them online. But Clint, just like with everything else, You got to be involved. You got to put the time in to be able to get the results out. We just had Last Story Standing where we had 4 contestants who participated. It's a 5-minute competition to tell your story, and you get to go and compete for us regionally. Nick Morrison, I'm giving you a shout out. He's now representing Houston and going regional, to then be able to go to our national conference and represent us nationally. And some of these stories are just riveting. It is incredible. But how do you fine tune that? Well, it's becoming vulnerable, participating, becoming involved in your local chapter. Now Nick gets mentors that he gets to collaborate with and go back and forth with, and that time is valuable to then be able to improve his skills.
But not everything's in person. There's a lot online.
Most of it, yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to go look at that. That helps. And a lot for the drive, because of where I'm at.
Absolutely.
I'm going to give a shout out to 2 people real quick. When I started years ago in there, Liz Levins and Deborah DeRuin, I adore both of them. But what I also like to do as a friend is sit back and marvel and get excited as I watch people's growth and what they do with their career. And both Liz and Deborah have done a lot with their careers, and it's been something to smile about.
Yes, yeah.
Real quick, let's talk on you taking over Dallas-Fort Worth. You said they'd been run as 2 separate businesses. What are some of the changes that you had to make between the 2? Are you still keeping them separate, or have you merged them together now?
Yeah, they're primarily separate, and it's one of those things that when you look at the overall aspect of how things were structured, it's just more simple. And in the future, what that looks like, it's definitely something. But for the most part, Ameritex is, built on the foundation of, its commitments to its customers. Whether in Dallas, whether in Houston. Yesterday, somebody asked, are you in Austin? I think ultimately, wherever we go, as long as I have involvement, a lot of it stems from me. I remember when we do supplier education programs at the Houston Apartment Association. One of the questions that they ask the management folks is, how do I get in there and how do I start doing business with you? And, one of the reoccurring answers is, we do business with you. We do business with Beth. So it doesn't matter if Beth is with Ameritex. It doesn't matter if Beth is with, A, B, C, D, E, F, G moving or, whatever. It's the relationships that they're building. And so, I would say, I'm going to continue to do what I do, and that's just building relationships. As far as, the business itself is concerned, it's something that I ultimately am looking to help other business owners that are in a service-based business on being able to set up their business for success. How do you set up the foundation? And, from the very beginning, how do I even identify what my core values are or what my company's mission or vision is? Really helping people business owners, be able to narrow those things down for themselves and offer a solution for, again, service-based business is something that, I can probably go into any service-based business and be able to, landscaping, plumbing, mechanical, whatever it is. It's just now part of the systems and the processes that you put in place.
Yeah. Well, Beth, I very much appreciate you coming on the show. Like all good shows, we could go on forever because there's so much
You
I
and
can
I
learn
tend
from
to,
you.
yes.
So I appreciate that. I want to go into the lightning round real quick. In the
Sure.
morning, coffee or tea?
Tea.
Mountains or beach?
Mountains.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
One song that always recharges you?
That's a good one. Oh my gosh, there's so many. Can I just say my Chapter 5 playlist on
Sounds
Spotify?
fine. That is fine. So Houston or Dallas, whichever one, where have you found your favorite restaurant?
I would say Houston by far has the best Persian food.
Do you have one restaurant you'd recommend to our listeners?
Darband is the OG, but the newest one is Rumi's Kitchen, and that's in the Galleria.
if you would, please tell our audience how they can get in touch with you, either in Dallas or in Houston, so that they can schedule a move with you.
Absolutely. Our handle is at Ameritex Movers. For Houston, they can find us at stressfreemove.com. In Dallas, they can find us at ameritexmovers.com.
Well, thank you. And Beth, thanks for coming on. And to our listeners, thanks for joining another episode of Genuine Business Stories. Beth's journey was absolutely an amazing business story. And it's a generational story. Your mom's story was also amazing. We appreciate all that both have done for the rest of us to learn from as other entrepreneurs. If Beth's story inspired you, check out other features. We'd love to see you on the show. If you've got a good story, let us know, and maybe we'll put you on. Until then, we also want you to support Lone Star Community Radio. Without the radio station, our nonprofit shows are not possible, and Dick does a whole lot to provide a platform for us in our shows. Until then, keep showing up, keep building, and keep it genuine, and thank you very much.